Hi, I welcome you to join us for a podcast with a really interesting guy, Dirk Christoph. He's got an interesting academic background, as well as a background of kind of waking up to some alternatives in the world. His current project is Paradise Syndicate, which, if I understand correctly, is a fairly new project, but it's going to be a cooperative or some kind of network of communities. So, hi, Dirk. Let's just start with, what is Paradise Syndicate?
Okay, so I can say it in one sentence, but then that would probably need some explaining. I'll say it anyways. So the Paradise Syndicate, you can think of it as an ecosystem for positive impact initiatives. So let's maybe start at the name before I dive into a little bit. What is it? What is a syndicate, right? If you look at the definition of a syndicate, because there's all sorts of syndicates. There's crime syndicates, and if you hear the name for the first time, you're like, what is a syndicate, right? So there's crime syndicates. There's worker syndicates. There's that support workers' rights. So there's all sorts of syndicates, and the reason is because if you go back into the Greek foundation of the name, the syndicate, it's basically, you can think of it as an association for individuals, companies, organizations, whatever entity that all strive for the same goal. Okay, so a syndicate, there's investment in syndicates, there's all sorts of syndicates in the syndicate. So if that makes any sense, that is the union of all the people that are striving towards creating a radically better world in this than we have right now. So it's basically bringing all those people together that actually want to positively impact the world instead of just being part of the problem.
So I'm wondering, what kind of entities are within the syndicate? Are we talking about intentional communities or eco-villages or what?
So to answer that, really, it's like, if you think about what you would need to create paradise, right? Then you would need a lot of different things, right? I mean, we're talking everything. Like in paradise, there'll probably be vehicles or some type of transportation in paradise. And there's probably something like a place for you to live in paradise. And there's probably something resembling food in paradise, but there's something resembling, I don't know, maybe a technology that lets you communicate on long distance as well in paradise. So paradise is not just limited to the aspect of living or the aspect of community, but we think that's one of the key pillars of, if you wanted to create paradise on earth, right, then you would definitely want to look at how people live and in intentional communities and communities as such. We think is a key component of that. That's why we are beginning. We have that on the first couple of things in the beginning of the Paradise Syndicate. But really, that you can think of it like this: if you have a company right now, okay, and you feel in your heart that really the company, its intention is to make the world a better place, right? Then you are probably one of the people that would be good for you to join the Paradise Syndicate, right? Because those people that have the same feeling as you, that actually want to enhance the world and just, instead of making it worse over time, they come together and they unify. That's one of the key aspects of why to form a Paradise Syndicate to begin with. It's to bring all those people together that are trying to have a positive impact in the world. And positive impact is an important concept here.
Right. Now, there's a lot of people in the world who say they want to have a positive impact, but those people don't all agree with each other. In fact, some of them fight each other. So what are the basic ethics or values that Paradise Syndicate is focused on that's different than the regular world?
So I think, first of all, I feel most people have no clear definition of what a positive impact is, right? I think, first of all, we don't know what that really is, and we don't really, like, to be honest, if you're brutally honest, most people right now, I'm saying 99.999% of the world's community right now is not having a positive impact. They might wish to have one, but every time you purchase a product at the supermarket, you're having a negative impact. Every time you're driving somewhere, your car puts out CO2, you're having a negative impact. Every piece of clothing that you buy has been made probably with chemicals or with plastic. So it's all of these interactions that we base our societies on right now are based on negative impact. Okay, so first of all, there needs to be a switch happening, which allows us to think, oh, could we design a lifestyle, okay, that is based not on degenerating the world, but actually on enhancing it. So then now we get to other people that say like, okay, zero impact is the right choice, right? So like reduce your footprint, go back to the Stone Age because it worked a lot better then. And there's a lot of arguments for that to be had, to be honest, right? I mean, it is, I love being around a bonfire and having a simpler life. It's beautiful, but still it's not going to help regenerate the world if all you do is zero impact, right? So zero impact, if everybody from now to tomorrow would stop having an impact and the world would still decline. And the reason is because we still have all these old debt, so to speak, right? Because we still have these big ACs that chuck up tons of electricity, and they need to be fired by something. We still have all the garbage in the Pacific swirling around. We still have all the water contaminated. With zero impact, we're not going to clean it up. So we need to move to something which is actually saying, and this is kind of my base, like easy to remember definition of what positive impact is. If you can put your hand on your heart and say, because I did that, the world is now better off than without it, then it's probably positive impact. But then there is concrete measurements. So let's say if you built a house and the world has more CO2 after you built the house, then it was negative impact. If you built a house and the house actually makes it so that you have less CO2 in the atmosphere, then it's a positive impact house in terms of CO2, right? You can still, you have different categories. I think it's interesting to look at what the most important ones are. And they're probably right now CO2 balance, pollution, like plastic pollution, water pollution, air pollution, right? So if you can have a positive impact on any of those categories, then you have, then that's because you're filtering water, or because you're filtering air, or because you are regenerating soils, or because you are taking plastic garbage out of the environment and you're recycling it into the system. That's what positive impact is based on, right? Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Like how, because there's...
Sure. I mean, I see some of the same issues that you see. My own place I live, Bosque Village, I've tried to reduce the impact to almost nothing, and restoring a forest, increasing the amount of wildlife habitat, figuring out how to do food forest farming so that we can not do industrial agriculture, but just kind of have food for humans within the system that's also feeding a very complex biosystem.
So here this is interesting because you're saying two different things, right? You're saying you are reducing your footprint, right? What you mean by that is you're trying to chuck out less CO2, you're trying to pollute the world less, you're trying to use up less resources. But at the same time, you're just describing a positive impact initiative, which is you are putting reforestation on it. You're capturing CO2 out of the atmosphere. So if you were to do a balance sheet, right, then you would see some of the activities are zero impact, some of them are negative impact, and some might be hopefully are very positive impact of what you're doing of regenerating. So that's really what it comes down to. If probably at least for a while, not all of our activities are going to be able to be positive impact, right? Until we've created, let's say your coffee mug, okay? Your coffee mug that you're drinking out of. Is that a positive impact coffee mug?
Well, it's made of clay.
Yes.
It's made of local clay. And It was probably fired using wood. which is not necessarily bad. It's a renewable resource. And it's, more importantly, it's chipped in 2 spots, but I'm still using it. I don't throw it out.
True.
And so the longer use I can get out of this mug, the lower its ecological cost was.
Correct. But here's the thing. What if you knew for a fact, okay, you knew for a fact that all the CO2 that was used up during the firing was actually not just all that CO2 was taken up, but actually twice as much, okay? Because you every time you fire up a batch of mugs, you plant 10 trees to offset the CO2 and to have a positive impact on top. Okay, so then the CO2 part of that mug would be positive impact. Does that make sense, right?
Yeah.
Then the clay itself, that doesn't have a negative impact, right? So now it comes down to, does it have any chemicals on it or not?
Right.
Not really. And if you were to at some point not use it anymore and just shatter it on the ground, it would basically turn to what is rocks, which you could use as a building material. So that doesn't really have a bad impact either, right? Yeah. So that way, if all mugs in the world were created that way, then you would say, oh, this is a positive impact mug, right? Mm-hmm. So there is a way to, like, we just tend to not see things so mathematically maybe, but you could, and if we would, then we would start to understand that every product has a negative impact if we don't do anything about it, right? I mean, right now, most products have.
Sure.
But if we do something about it, then we can actually enhance the world building these products. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yes, I very much like how you're thinking about thinking about the equation of everything that we impact, every bit of energy that goes into it, the externalized factors that we don't always think about, you know. Maybe something like a food that we eat was produced far away, and maybe it was produced in labor conditions that we think are horrible, but we accept it because we don't see them. They're far away, and those don't affect us directly. And I really like that. And you know, I question every single item that I have in my life, and I go ahead and decide I'm going to have a computer, I'm going to have a camera, and so I accept that certain things I'm going to be, you know, accepting from civilization. I'm going to choose technologies, and I'm going to know that those have a negative impact. I can wonder.
But here again, we could make those computers, even the ones that you already have, positive impact computers. How? If you would make sure while purchasing your computer that 2 computers get recycled entirely from the garbage pile, they get taken out of the garbage pile, they get recycled, and because you purchased that computer, that little price for making that happen is just calculated into your computer. Because you bought that positive impact computer, you actually enhance the world, right? So that's the solution to that conundrum. Your conundrum is just you don't have that alternative yet. It's just not, there is no positive impact computers yet, right? So that's what the Paradise Syndicate is here to change. It's here to create positive impact alternatives for basically everything that we could have in life. And the way we do that is by working with people that are already doing it and creating ways how to turn that article into a positive impact article.
Yeah, I like the idea a lot. My solution generally is just don't use most stuff.
True. That's the minimizing minimizing your impact option, right? But here's the thing. Okay, I'm giving you an example. Okay, driving a car, right? So right now, whatever you do, your car is going to have a negative impact, right? It does. It doesn't matter what you fired with. You can make it. You can make it electric. You will have to mine Bolivia's beautiful rainforest and cut it all down and have slave laborers getting the lithium out of the mines. And you could. So it's horrible. You can do maybe you can do like hydrogen, right? Hydrogen might be cool with solar and all that. But guess what? Doesn't matter, because that also had to be created. It had to be fired up. It had to be, it'll eventually be junk.
Yeah, there's lots and lots of fake green solutions being offered.
Absolutely. The world is full of it. It's full of it. And here is the solution to that. I'm telling you, I have a solution of how to turn any car into a positive impact car.
Well, you could use
You'll
a
be
horse.
like, no, not without a horse. Without a horse, you can still use the car. It's without a horse.
Tell me how.
It's ridiculously easy, and it's just something that we just don't think about too much. Okay, so here's the thing. You use a car, okay, and I have to say, I'm just going to make this example just for a CO2 balance, because it gets more complicated for everything else, but we can't do
the equation
everything.
For any product is super complicated.
Okay, here's the thing. Your car, it doesn't, like, kind of depends on how big your engine is, but let's say most cars, they put out somewhere around 150 grams of CO2 for every kilometer they are in use. Okay? Roughly. That's roughly what they put out. Like they burn up the fuel, whatever is in there, and they put out 150 grams. One tree takes up about 22,000 grams in a year. Okay, so if you divide 22,000 grams by 150, you get to somewhere about 146. Okay, so what does that mean? Every 146 kilometers you drive your car puts out enough CO2 for you to be needing a tree to get it to zero. Okay. So far so good. So I'm going to propose a system, and I can tell you how that works technically, but it's a system that automatically plants 2 trees for every 150 kilometers that you drive. Okay. So if it automatically plants these 2 trees, then you're not just offsetting the CO2 balance that you're creating, you're actually putting in, you're taking up twice as much as you're putting out. So the first tree is just to take off yours, but then you're actually enhancing the environment. So you're taking off all the CO2 from maybe your previous cars that you had, maybe your last 30 years of driving your car, right? Or your family's car, or somebody else's car, right? So here's the thing though, if everybody were to do that, okay? Actually, if 50% of the world were to do that, we'd get to zero, okay? And who says that you need to stop at 2 trees? If you want to plant 10, right? Because you feel especially in doubt to do that because you can, well then do that, right? Technically, I can show you how you do that. We have there's a little port in pretty much every car. Every modern car has a little port that gives you an active live readout, a real-time readout of the CO2 that your car is producing. So we put a little adapter there, hooks up directly to your phone, and for every 22,000 grams of CO2 that you put out, you're planting 2 trees. Automatically gets purchased through your PayPal. At the end of the month, you get a bill that says $30, and these $30 are what you plant the trees for that month. And your car is CO2 positive impact, like that. Cool.
You know, that's a lot of trees. I mean, if you were going to drive from Seattle to Mexico City, you would have to plant an entire forest, a big one.
So it's yes and no. So here, first of all, we are talking always tree equivalents. Okay, so there's way more efficient ways to draw down CO2 than trees. One of them being like the blue-green algae. That's like awesome. Like blue-green algae, like a small reactor can pull down as much as 2.5 acres of trees, right? But then there's another thing here, which is the tree. If you can guarantee that tree will live, okay, for a certain amount of time. So let's say if the tree lives guaranteed for 5 years, then you can divide that number of trees by 5, because that tree that you're planting is going to pull down CO2 for 5 years, right?
No.
So having said that, it's actually by far not as much as you think. I've done the calculation, right? In Germany, here's the thing. In Germany, we have about 60% taxes on gas, okay? So there's gas price and 60% of that is tax. if we were to take only 10% of the gas price and directly put that towards tree planting initiatives, we would not just offset, but as I said, turn any vehicle into positive impact vehicle like that in terms of CO2. And that actually creates a marketplace. You have to think about it. It's a marketplace for those people, and that already exists, right? There's already marketplaces where you can go and purchase a tree. You know, you can go online, look for that, look about buying a tree, and you can purchase somebody else's service to plant a tree for you. And guess what? We'd be pretty damn good off if we plant some more trees. Like the ecosystems in the world would be sprouting back up, especially if there were fruit trees. You know that, right?
Oh yeah, I plant a lot of trees here. That's my main thing. I actually, for my values I live by, the trees are more important than the people that I invite here. The number one thing is protect the forest. And then we need to fit into that system because the forests die, we die.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then, I mean, think about that. If these kind of systems would be installed in cars, and even at the beginning, we're talking that people are using them just voluntarily. They're like, you know what? I want to get rid of the guilt to drive my car, and I'm willing to say, okay, I'm happy to pay for that to get that guilt off. Right? And be like, okay, I want to, and not just get the guilt off, but actually feel good about driving my car. You know, if you make a car positive impact that way, CO2 positive impact that way, it'd be good if you drive your car. That doesn't make sense.
Right. Well, this is very, very much like carbon credits.
It's a similar system, but I think the application is different because it's not just about offsetting. I think offsetting was dead on arrival. Like, what it's like it doesn't work, right? It only works if 100% of all people were offsetting all of their CO2, then it might work, right? But what we need to think about is to how do we get towards becoming CO2 emission negative, so carbon footprint positive, with the least amount of people. And the easiest way is really for every single person of us to be excited about saving the world using positive impact.
Right. Well, you got a couple issues there. One is, I would love to see people get excited. Like even right now with the pandemic, people are starting to say things like, I'm going to plant a garden for the first time. And so I think the pandemic is actually encouraging people. It's shocking them. It's shaking them up and saying the world is maybe a little more fragile in some ways than we thought. And that they're maybe more open to ideas that might make them feel more secure. The other part of that is when I look at a graph of energy use, it seems like about 10% of the world uses 50% of the resources.
True.
And of course, there's a lot of systems that, historically have caused that to be the case. And I don't know, and I know people who are in the 10%. I come from a place where I was probably in that 10%. And I don't think those people want to reduce their use of resources. And if the price of the resources goes up, I think that they're going to be very upset.
Okay, so first of all, yes. Do people want to have less quality of life? Of course not, right? And if you think about it, neither did you. Like you went into the woods, but for you, your quality of life increased, right?
That's correct.
So it's one of the main fallacies in the heads of humans is to equate money with quality of life. It's not the same thing. Yeah. You can purchase quality of life with money. You can purchase a ton of headaches with money as well if you want to. Like that depends on the choice that you make, right? Is it, I think, so here's, I think, one of the key issues here. Is it generally a good idea for us to reduce our energy consumption? Absolutely, right? Absolutely. No question about that, right? I mean, firstly, I've been living on a sailboat for about a year and a half or almost 2 years. And my entire sailboat was run with 500 watts of solar panels. Like I actually took out the generator. I like, okay, I don't need that anymore. I took it out, right? Because why carry a big chunky heap of metal which is rusting inside of my boat around me when I can run the entire thing without, right? and I was running a fridge on that. I was running our laptops on that, and I've been running all of our instruments on that. Everything, lights, everything. So you can run an entire house on 500 watts. The problem is the way that our commodities, our electric devices are designed is they're not designed to be energy efficient. Like if you have a front-loading fridge, that's just a recipe of losing all the cool air every time you open the door. So it's like, obviously it's not going to be so efficient as one which is top loading, right? Sure. So these kind of things you have to think about and change if you want to reduce your energy consumption, which is great, because the less energy you consume, the easier it is to get to positive impact. Again, it's kind of like this, like the less money you take out of your bank account, the easier it's going to be to build up your bank account, right? So
I think in a lot of ways, what we need to do is redefine what quality of life is.
Absolutely.
And realize that a lot of the consumptive things we do, a lot of the consumption we do, actually we become slaves to that. You know, we have to always be changing batteries and paying more bills. And we think we're living this great lifestyle because we have all this stuff, but we're actually slaves to it. And so like you said, when I moved out to the forest, I feel like I became much freer. And I don't even have 500 watts of solar panels. I only have 340. And that's for a big place. So I can have 20 people here, and it's a lifestyle change for them. But that means we don't use we don't use anything at night except lights. There is no refrigeration. We don't use any electricity for heating or cooling. So it's a very hardcore thing. Your example of a sailboat is a really great thing, where people have such a small system that they can start to see everything that they're consuming and all the waste that they produce. That's awesome. Yeah.
Here's my thought on that. So I've always been very, like, I'm an engineer. Okay. So I care. I'm very practical, and I care about reaching the result. Okay. Mm-hmm. And my result that I want to reach is all of us as humanity being an abundant, harmonious, beautiful species that lives in harmony with all sentient beings, and at the same time doesn't destroy its ecosystem, but actually enhances its ecosystem. Okay, right. So it's constantly, as a steward, make sure we have more plants, more food, more animals, more diversity, right? Because that's in the end what the ultimate luxury is. That's the funny thing about like at some point, I think some human had that great idea that if he works really hard and all that he's going to get money faster to buy that house out in nature, you know, because in the end, that's what all really rich people do. They buy out house out in nature. No really, really seriously rich person lives downtown New York. Like they don't. They might have an apartment there, but they don't live there, you know, because it's not cool. It's just not good, you know. So having that redefinition is important. But here's the thought with that, okay? So you know that if you make people, okay, so here's my sales pitch, okay? You want to move out into nature, not have registration, shit into a toilet which doesn't have water you can flush, and you're gonna have to be not having tons of amenities and comforts that you're used to. Come join us that's a hard sales pitch to make.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, it's a really hard sales pitch, and you need a lot of consciousness to take that deal up. And I'm very afraid that we don't have enough people to take that deal up. And that's we've been offering that deal like for 40, 50 years, and like, you want to take this up? It's awesome. And it is. I know. I mean, I love it. You know, I love being in that place. But most people, if you offer that deal, or you won't have AC, you won't have a fridge. And what, I won't have a fridge? How am I even going to, like, what are you talking about? I don't want to hear any more of it, you know? Yep. So that was the past. Okay, now here's the future. This is the future. You see this around me? Okay? Yep. This is a sexy, attractive, natural dwelling, which looks amazing, gives you an amazing feeling to be inside there, and it produces not just that it produces all the energy it needs for sure, but to give you the comforts that you're used to, right? Maybe you'll be simplifying a little bit. Maybe you not have the 5-door opening fridge and you just have a normal fridge, right? But you still want your kitchen. You want to be able to switch on the gas stove and all these things. And guess what? Most of these things are not inherently impossible. You know, like if you have a biodigester next to your house and that produces biogas, you can cook all year long on that, just with the food scraps that you're filling in that. And I mean, I'm personally like I'm a toilet nut. I've been thinking about how to solve that toilet situation for a long time. I'd be super excited to build one on your village soon. But basically, we need to solve the toilet so that it's comfortable to sit on. There's no smells. There's nothing. If it feels like you're sitting on a pile of, then it's just not going to be attractive for most people. That's just realistically looking at it. So my question that I have is, how can we fuse what we know we want with practical solutions that allow us to do that, right? So this is a good example because this is not built out of concrete. All of this structure is CO2 emission negative. It's all positive impact. If you can build one of these, and actually with all the wood that you used, you plant 2 new trees for every tree that you used up. Mm-hmm. This house is ballers positive impact to begin with, okay? So now if you strap onto the roof of that, you strap on a blue-green algae reactor that actively pulls down CO2 all the time, and that produces spirulina algae for you to eat or to put onto your soil as a fertilizer, or for you to create biodiesel out of and glycerin to make your soap, right? Then guess what? You have an actively positive impact building, which over time is amazing for the environment. And that's really the key here. If we can build houses like that, then we can put hand on our heart and say, because I built that house, the world is now better off than without me building that house. Okay, yeah. That's the step beyond just building it passively or minimizing impact. That's the thought of, okay, my house is actually all the time actively pulling down CO2. Mm-hmm. Is yours? Oh, it isn't? Yeah, well, guess what? You can come by, check it out. It's like super sweet. And you can live in this house with a positive feeling. You'll be like excited. Like this specifically is actually it's a suite inside a hotel in Tulum called the Azulik, and they have an art gallery as well. It's like built kind of like in the same style, and it's so funny because people go into that art gallery, and like tons of people do, like all the Instagrammers and the TikTokers of these, you know, that kind of people. They go in there, and then they take pictures, not of the art, but of the walls and of the ceiling and of the floor of the art gallery. So, I mean, can you imagine that insanity of somebody going into the Louvres and then like just taking a picture of the white wall and like of the white ceiling and like skipping the Mona Lisa? Yeah. And that's super exciting. Why is that super exciting? Because it shows that people are highly attracted to this type of architecture. Yeah. They're highly attracted to being in the nature. They're super attracted by it, but they're highly put off by bugs on their skin. They're put off by sitting on a stinky toilet, and they're put off by reducing their comforts. Okay, so and that is not mutually exclusive. It is not. It can be made happen that both works.
Yeah, I tend to agree that the only way we can do this is to not eat the rich, but seduce the rich. Seduce them into ideas that are so attractive, absolutely, that are so popular, that are so fulfilling to them at the level of the soul, if that exists, and that other people around them are validating them for that, and that instead of being attached to screens all the time, and instead of being in a high-tech world, they're interpersonally really interacting deeply with people on the most primal levels, and they're throwing around ideas like we're throwing around ideas, and that they're so attracted to their soul being fed that they're no longer interested
Absolutely.
in, you know, flying around all the time, or having a house that makes them, you know, have so much space they have to clean it all the time, or a car that feeds their ego, or clothing with a brand name on it that they have to buy a new clothing every year. So maybe we can seduce them out of that into a culture that is just fundamentally more attractive to us as humans.
I think there's I think I agree with most of what you said. So first of all, that is based on a marketing principle. There's two types of principles, okay? Like two main principles. One is called push marketing and the other is called pull marketing. Okay, so push marketing means I have this pen. This is the most amazing pen in the world. Do you want to really, really buy this pen because it's such a beautiful pen? Buy this pen. It's only $99.99 on Amazon right now. And that is annoying, okay? And it's something that nobody wants. But if you see, you know, for this pen, if you see me out in nature in the most spectacular place and I have my amazing notebook and I'm writing with this pen and I'm writing like, this is so awesome. I love my life. And I wish you guys could be here because I'm getting so excited about my pen and whatever. Then people are like, oh, that's a nice pen. I kind of really like that pen. And that is pull marketing, okay? Pulling people into that. And that's exactly the only, I believe that's the only way to save humanity. Yeah. Is pull marketing. Like, we need to be the sexiest thing that you could do with your life, okay? And if we are, then people are going to feel attracted to that, right? And if we are just like an alternative where we just go into the woods and we go back into the Stone Age, then they're not. Like some of us are, and God bless all the people that understand that, right? Of course, but most people, you're not going to pull out of their holes with that. You're just not, right? Yeah. So, and then in terms of, I'm happy for them to spend $3,000 on a bag, you know, but only if that bag made it so that there's 1,500 bags less swimming in the ocean, you know. But that's the kind of luxury that we can create. And guess what? Like, even the richest of the rich are excited about the concept of not dying in an apocalypse. Yeah. Okay. So here's the cool thing about, like, there's a theory I have, they call this the banana point. Okay. So
banana point? The
banana point theory. Okay. Yeah. So here it is. Banana point. You know, in Germany, we used to have this thing, we had organic bananas, right? 10, 15 years ago. Like, they came into being, like, they didn't really exist before. Like, some, of course, some way back, they were, well, everything was organic, and then somebody created Chiquita or whatever. And then, so we, at the beginning, we had like a normal banana, like the chemical fertilized kind, that was a euro. Right, and the organic banana was like €5, right? So it was ridiculously more expensive, like 4 or 5 times more expensive, and nobody bought it really because it was like really expensive, you know. Like, if you can get 4 times more of the thing that looks like a banana but is a chemical cocktail, I'm going for that, right? But if some people just had enough money and they're like, well, this is a chemical cocktail and this is food, so I'm buying the food. So they didn't care about the price. So the price came down. Why? Because more people understood that you can make €4 on a banana than if you make it that way. So more and more people did. So the price came down. That came down to the banana point. Okay. And the banana point is when the price of your organic product or your positive product, right, is still higher than the conventional product. But it is at a point where this fraction of price difference is so negligible for most people's perception, right, that they don't give a shit and they just buy it anyways, you know? It's like, okay, if this is €1 and this is €1.19, then I'm buying this because it doesn't matter to me whether it's €1 or €1.19, because this is food and I absolutely appreciate that organicness of it. To be paying 19% more. That's a lot of money for, like, if you because it's not more expensive to produce organically. It's not. It really depends on how you're producing it, right? So I mean, just at the core of it, it cannot be more expensive because you need to put in chemical fertilizers into this. You need to put in chemical pesticides into this, and you don't have to pay that for here. So anyways, this banana point is super exciting. And the reason why this is super exciting is because that means that every product that is inherently or which is positive impact in nature is inherently better than a product which is not. Okay? Does that make sense? I'll repeat. If
well, I think so. And one of the interesting factors on that is that we don't live in a static energy environment. A lot of agriculture is being fueled by cheap oil.
Yeah.
And that cheap oil is likely to not be as cheap in the future. We won't necessarily run out all of a sudden, but the cost of getting it is going up in comparison to what we get out of it. And so your banana prices are going to inherently get closer together. Although I don't know if you're ever going to have cheap bananas in Germany, because even if you did them in a greenhouse, there'd be a lot of cost. And of course,
to be honest, like bananas are super cheap around here. Like I always buy bananas because I love bananas, but they're totally affordable. But that's kind of besides the point. I think the important thing here is really to understand that every product that is, let's say, I'll make it an easy example. Every product that is organic is inherently quality-wise superior to the product which is not, right? So thereby, if you could produce a product which is similar in characteristics to your not organic product, then it will always be outsold by the organic one, okay? Because the organic one is just better. And here's the thing, organic, and let's say organic and positive impact is the same spiel. It's again the same thing. If you could choose between two bananas and one banana is just an organic banana and the other one is an organic banana which is at the same time like because you buy a banana, or like for every 10 bananas that you buy you plant a tree in the Amazon, then you're buying this banana. You are. Yeah, it's because it's inherently better. It's a better value for you, right? And for bananas, that's a large discussion. I don't think we need to earn that right with bananas. But let's say if it's backpacks, right? So you have two backpacks. One is made out of recycled bottles, and the other one isn't. Well, you're getting the one with the recycled bottles. You are, because I mean, if they look the same, they have the same pricing, you are going to get the other one because it's just sexier. You like it more.
I have a suspicion that if we didn't subsidize fossil fuels, the pricing structure of a lot of products would change radically.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because right now,
I mean,
if I do something, I'm competing with industrial systems. Like if I raise rabbits, for example, and I want to try and sell the rabbit meat, I'm competing with the industrial chicken system, and they have these big, huge warehouses full of chickens crammed in there, and there's no way I can compete on price.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that there'll be a lot of changes in things as energy prices go up, or as if we could stop subsidizing them, that would be a great push towards more sustainable products. Now, it might mean that it's not even worth it for you to get bananas, though, in Germany. I mean, I grow bananas myself. In other words, like the eating locally idea starts making a lot of sense if we start to include the externalized costs of transporting everything everywhere.
I tend to agree. So, I mean, should we be eating bananas in Germany or not is definitely another question, right? Because sure, there is CO2 attached to the transportation of it. They're being cut when they're premature and all these things. I agree. And I totally agree on the subsidizing part as well. Like, we should be taking away all subsidies, like especially those from milk farmers and cow farmers. Like, sorry, but that has to stop. Like, like mass livestock production is the most harmful thing we do to the planet. Yeah. And if you look at it karmically, well, if you're killing an Indian god every 20 seconds and you're like just filling it up with like just treating it horribly, then you deserve to be in that situation. So how about we
have
stop?
really artificial prices. If we let the market handle it, that doesn't mean things would magically be good, because we have to then, you know, protect people who, for example, steal water and they steal from the environment to profit. But right now we actually throw the prices off by making things that wouldn't be profitable to do because of maybe lobbying, you know, government controls. And one of my concerns is that when people start to think about environmentalism, they think, oh, we have to get the government to fix it. We have to give them more money to fix it. And I'm like, those are the same guys that are helping mess stuff up now.
Yes.
I want to get away from that. And I don't have magic solutions, because the stuff we're talking about is very complicated. And you're very excited about your solutions, and I love it, man. I applaud you for your work. But we both know that it's really complex.
So here's my thought on that. Yeah. I totally agree that we need to to find a solution with governments, and I am like the entire Paradise Syndicate concept is not. I don't want to be political. I don't want to be political too fast. Okay, right. So there's a reason why, because I personally, I think that the best thing we could do as humanity is become self-sufficient in all of our needs, and decentralize self-sufficiency. Because if self-sufficiency on a high comfort level is decentralized, governments have no power anymore. Right, right. So my strategy. So here's I'll give you my the holy grail of why what the core at the core essence of what the Paradise Syndicate is all about, and especially the community part. If we can design a blueprint for a positive impact community, okay, which inherently creates value a lot more than it needs, which inherently creates abundance and regenerates and makes the world a better place. And it's even, and this is an important thing which we haven't really gone into yet, is financially viable for the people that live in it, okay?
Right, right.
Then we have a blueprint, okay? And if we then think of that blueprint as the DNA inside of a seed, and we just spread out that seed everywhere in the world and teach people how to do that, then we will be off any dependency within a generation or two, if we really did that way.
I would like to edit what you just said and add an S at the end of the word blueprint.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because
sure.
People have such different needs depending on their cultural values, depending on their age, whether they want to have kids or not, how liberal they want to be in their cultural choices, relationships, etc. So I think a lot of templates, a lot of blueprints.
Now, I think it's to be honest, I think it's probably that most basics of that print are the same, but then how that turns out is then open to the local community, right? So I mean, you need to be blunt. Like, you need water filtration. It doesn't matter what kind of ethnicity is shitting into the water. The ethnicity needs water filtration,
right.
And you need to come up with systems to pull out CO2 out of the atmosphere and make something usable out of it. That doesn't matter on your ethnicity either. Right. It doesn't. So I think in terms of climate zones, I think we definitely need some different systems depending on different climate zones. Sure. But the core essence of a paradise community is going to be very, very similar. It's just going to be turning out into different flowers in the end, but every flower needs water and sunlight, you know?
Right, so you have some base values and design principles, but then in one climate, your architecture obviously will be radically different than in another.
Yeah, sure. But the cool thing is really, it's all about getting the knowledge together to begin with, right? And then, I mean, most of that knowledge is already there. I mean, we already know how to build airships. We already know how to build out of Super Adobe. We know how to build it out of Adobe. We know how to build, we don't really know about this too much yet, but we'll learn about that. We'll learn about bamboo building and all those things. So that's all cool. We're going to get that done. But I think where we can accelerate the process is because right now, specifically during this time, Corona, I think there's many people thinking about a more natural lifestyle. Yeah. There's many people that have thought about self-sufficiency now. Okay. Mm-hmm. So these people, guess what? They are looking for land. Like I've talked to some real estate agents in the States, and it's crazy how the rural land is selling out right now. Like people are like, okay, we're getting out of this. Like they realize that if they're living downtown New York and there's an actually real virus that is, or something like that, that's really serious, they're dead within like 3 weeks. Okay. Mm-hmm. And they know that that's not properly nice for them. So they are looking for alternatives. And so is all the world. Like we realize we feel drawn to nature because we know that that's actually where we come from, and we want to go back. So I think we are now in the best best possible scenario for intentional communities or communities that are based on a concept to grow.
So I'd like to take us in a different direction. Let's just assume that we have a template for energy systems, architecture, agriculture, and that our infrastructure is set up to be sustainable. You know, we're planting.
Yeah, that's another huge point is business and prosperity. Yeah. We need to have
economics of it, that we're not just rich people going off in the woods as survivalists, we're not isolating, but we're still trading, you know, and that's fine. It occurs to me as I study intentional communities and really any kind of community over time that there's a base level of ethics that are needed to function well. And we know that some societies fall apart and have massive amounts of conflict. Some of them are aggressive and steal from others as part of their strategy, you know. Others are too weak and they get stolen from.
Yeah.
And then even if you have a community of two people, let's say a couple, they have conflicts. And so I start to wonder, what's the infrastructure socially that we need? What are the agreements that we need to have? And, you know, I think about things like nonviolent communication, which is a popular thing some people are into, or radical honesty, or even having a culture that says we accept a wide variety of diversity sexually, you know, that there can be different kinds of people, that maybe it's okay to be gay, you know, or that we accept that people want to alter their minds using a plant or something. Yeah. And so we make these cultural decisions. It seems like we need a social framework of ethics at the base level that we say, this is how we operate things. And then, of course, all the other stuff on top can be different depending on what you want.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I'm going to be, what is the name? Proselytizing? I could say, I could proselytize. That probably I'm using the
That's
word
okay.
Wrong, but you could sum it up in one sentence, which is don't be an asshole. Which at the core, it is the rule of all rules. Like if you, but then I agree. I mean, do we want to have that written out and have people agree on these things? Yes. And should these be towards the highest ideal of what we can think as a human could be right now? Absolutely. I mean, within the project that we've talked about before, the Ecovias There More project, we've been working on exactly these kinds of agreements we call it a membership agreement. Once you join the community, that you agree to all these things. And if that's not your thing, well, then it's not the right community for you. Right.
Right. And
I think basically the key thoughts, I mean, for me personally, that would be personal freedom, right? As long as I can do whatever I think, right? As long as I'm not hurting anybody else, right? As long as I'm not hurting my neighbors or molesting them or whatever,
right?
I should be able to do whatever I want in my own, my own place. But as a guiding principle, I think it's for me personally, again, I think positive impact is a super awesome guiding principle, because it's something that we can all agree on. Like if we make, like kind of like permaculture, right? If we become that permanent society, then we can only do that if we're either minimum, like if we are sustainable or positive impact, right? Because they're very much related concepts, right? And we need to have certain basics, and I think banning, or not banning, I mean not condoning hatred, not condoning bigotry and fascism and all these things are going to be important, right? But then how do you do it, and how is it efficient? Like kind of like, you know, the Finnish, the way that they do their penitentiaries, their prisons,
mm-hmm.
they're built on the concept of resocialization.
Right.
Okay, so instead of punishing for bad behavior, they are focusing on the concept of how can you actually recondition the human to stop doing the thing that it got him in trouble into the first place, and then resocializing them in a real honest effort. There's the concept of Ubuntu, which is this: instead of, if somebody fucks up, instead of like shaming them in a big circle, is praising all their good things in a big circle. So there's many ways that we can do that, and I think it's an interesting question to answer. And I don't have all the answers on that one though.
I sure don't either, you know. And I think that the people who think that they do have all the answers and yell at the other people, I kind of want to avoid those people, because I think we really gotta get into the meat of it and say, okay, we have fundamental issues with coercion, which is pervasive in social life. And then when are we willing to initiate force against someone because their behavior is so incorrect, we will not accept it.
Yeah.
You know, like I don't think either one of us is probably going to argue for pedophilia or rape or murder or theft. Although there'll be some people that say you shouldn't own any property, and so property is theft. You know, and there'll be other people who want to walk around naked, but other people say you are attacking me and my child by doing that.
Yeah, but I think these people that want to run around naked and the ones that don't, I mean, I think if they both are agreeing on the basic rule of wanting to be respectful towards each other, then the person that is naked doesn't want to be naked in front of the kids of somebody else because he understands that would be disrespectful. And the person that has the kids there would be like, okay, I want to be respectful of their privilege to be wearing whatever they want to wear on their bodies either. So let's find a way to work that out together. I think there is inherently, I think, first of all, I think there is inherently certain behaviors that are destructive in nature, right? I mean, theft, robbery, violation, pedophilia, and all these things, they are inherently there. I mean, it's hard to argue that they have any merit. Like, I think they're destructive, and they don't belong inside a healthy, vibrant, beautiful future society. I don't think they do. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's some argument for me to tell, like, we need to grow on these kind of things. I don't know. But like, for me personally, I'd be like, I don't need somebody to steal my shit. That's right. Don't have to do it. But then at the same time, we can agree on certain concepts of ways of interacting, such as you said, like, I mean, conflict resolution, being of high vibration and high energy, being creative, being constructive, and respecting the freedom of everybody else to make their own choices, right? Those can be principles. And I think to be honest, I think they are very similar for most people.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of agreement. If you get people together and they have enough resources, most of them will act in ways that they're not an asshole.
Exactly.
Now, of course, what an asshole is depends on some definitional issues. And obviously assholes don't agree.
Yeah, but most people agree on which the asshole is. Like, it's
yeah.
And then again, they need to, like, again, trying to come to a point of reconciliation. It's good to get these people back together into the same boat.
Can we fix assholes? You know,
I think we can, in a loving environment, and giving them the right area for them to grow. I think we can, absolutely. I mean, we cannot help. We can give them an environment in which being an asshole is not helping them, and at the same time, overcoming their assholeness becomes becomes a natural thing that they feel drawn to, because everybody, I mean, if you're the only big asshole inside of a loving, amazing community, then guess what? You're going to adapt to that, right? Especially if all of the other people are conscious of that you're the only one that kind of constantly wants to whatever piss in the community pool, and everybody else is like not doing that, and they're super nice to you, and they put up this bathroom right next to the pool. Then at some point you're like, okay, I'm really just sitting in my own piss here. Like, why do I?
Right. Well, and you look at social solutions of, you know, trying to rationalize with people, trying to develop empathy within them, shunning them, or worst cases, you banish them. In some cases, and we've talked about this even with the community you're involved with, we're talking about, that there's things which would get you kicked out of the community.
Yeah.
And that's not the best solution, but that does solve it. The other thing that's interesting is that if we have different value sets, maybe some people just shouldn't be together, or we have different specialized spaces. So for example, if somebody wants to walk around naked, okay, so set aside part of a place for that kind of thing. And so, you know, I've even thought with campfires, for example. Yeah. You could have campfires for noisy people that want to play music and have, you know, lots of noisy fun. And then you have other campfires that are smaller.
Guess what? I am not a noisy person. And I'm not but at the same time, I'm sure there's like 3 times in the year where I want to be at the noisy campfire, and 4 that I want to be at the relaxed campfire. And that's not because we're separating people. That's just giving them the right options and to choose from. And I might want to run around naked some days in the year, maybe not all the time. So maybe we want to do that over there. That's no problem. We can do that. Like, we can find these types of solutions.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of things that can be said for these social contracts that we're making, but that we don't all have to agree to the same thing for a lot of this higher level stuff. So we have a base set of morality, a base set of ethics that we're hardcore about. And we say, you have to fit in with this, at least in this space. But all this other stuff, you know, people have different things they want. And what a 25-year-old wants might not be what a 60-year-old wants around them.
Yeah. But it's something that we, like, I think we also need to be aware about priorities. So, I mean, what is higher on the priority? To make sure that the human species does not auto-destruct and destruct the most of the ecological system on Earth with it, or that grumpy grandpa doesn't want to hang out on the same bonfire as young Peter, you know? These are, like, you know, they're not the same. But the thing is that I think the key what I'm trying to get at here is this. Inside communities, I think there's especially intentional communities, and that was one of the questions that you kind of asked me before, which I think, let me see whether I can find it. Like, it was basically going on about the negative aspects of intentional communities and what makes communities fail. Okay, so I personally believe that there is a huge part of what makes community fail is forced dependency. Okay, so that means I depend on you for something that I normally consider normal. Okay, so I'd say, for instance, if we're all like, we're chucking in and we're all growing food together, and there's Peter, and Peter just doesn't carry his load. He's like doing his own thing. He never helps out, and he's not growing, like, he's not putting in the work everybody else is putting in, but then he sits at the table and eats the same food. Okay, and he gets all the food that everybody else gets.
Right, he's a freeloader.
Exactly. So guess what that is? That's going to create a ton of friction. Okay, and that's the friction that communities die on. Okay, that's why intentional communities, right? Then there's another big one, which is lack of resources. Okay, so if everybody is poor, like dead poor, and now you have to, like, okay, guys, we need to buy a pair of shoelaces for Lily because she doesn't have shoelaces, and then everybody, like, chucks out the last 20 pennies that they have, and then it hurts them inside, but they know that Mary needs the shoelaces. That's just another recipe for disaster. It's we do live in a monetary system. You might create a bubble which does work differently, but everything around it is a monetary system. So if you don't produce any outside value inside your community is bound to be very primitive or very, very easily destroyed, right? Because you will see, and the kids that grow up there will see like, oh man, he has a cell phone and rides around a bicycle, and I have neither. Like, you know, why does he have that? Well, he has money. What is money? Oh yeah. Oh. So we need to understand that it's not attractive either. Like becoming like limitless and then saying, okay, sorry, not limitless, moneyless, and then saying, well, it was a choice. Like I choose to live in this 9 by 9 feet little shack that I call a house. It's not a choice as much as it was also a necessity because you had no other choice, right? So you need to be real about these things. I mean, I know that I mean, I'd much rather have my own tiny house that I built myself for very little money than living for rent in a bigger place. But still, I think, so here's one of the key things within the Paradise Syndicate. I said at the beginning, I think I did, that it's all about creating prosperity for the members of the Paradise Syndicate, okay? Because here's the key thought. Like right now, most of the money in the world is like I read this other day, I think that the top 2,000 billionaires have more money than the 5 billion people in the world or something like that. So it's like, it's drastically bad. Like the allocation of funds is completely screwed. So most people that are ignorant right now have most of the money. And what we need is a world where all the people that are heart-centered, conscious, beautiful, loving people, that they have the money, and that people that are ignorant don't have the money. Okay, that's the system that we need to strive towards. So I'm guessing if just think about it this way, how would the world look like right now if all the conscious people in the world were all the billionaires and all the ignorant people were not?
I disagree with the idea that people with more wealth are ignorant.
No, I'm not. I'm
people who are conscious.
I'm not making that assumption. And if it came across that way, I'm sorry. I'm not saying that all rich people are ignorant and all poor people aren't. I'm saying most of the people that have made large riches in this world haven't made it through positive impact. They made it either stealing through the military industrial complex. They made it through some type of yeah. I mean, they're not heart-centered people. That's my main argument.
Almost all of the economics in the world are based on force and theft. We got
exactly
here from hundreds and hundreds of years of this shit. In fact, thousands of years of it, and it's
correct
in our human nature to do that, which is a depressing idea. But
I think it's just that it's been so easy to do it, and there's a bunch of reasons for that. But I'd say I want to come back to this real quick because it's a very important concept, and it's can we agree that most money right now is allocated in people that are not very high on the consciousness scale?
No, I reject that.
You reject that most money in the world is allocated in people's hands that are not high on the
consciousness.
Okay, good.
I mean, that's a lofty woo-woo word.
Okay, good. Then let me
I would rather talk about things like money is mostly fake, okay? Like the stock market is meaningless crap. Money is printed in different ways. What money even is so messed up that we have these bizarre problems, and then those are backed up by use of force. And
Brian,
then I'll start to think about what really matters is who owns land. And so I want to think about land reform because we're so messed up in that. And, you know, if people own their land, if that land, because land is real value, that's real wealth. You know, you could hand me $1 million in stock, but that could go away tomorrow. And
I agree on all these things with you. I don't believe money is, I know that money is an illusion. What else can you add zeros to and then it just becomes more valuable?
Right. And
I know that. I know that, but
just printing money, I mean, the dollar is very likely to fall.
Dude, the problem is this. It is true what you say But most people in this world right now do not see that, okay? So it doesn't matter whether you see it or not, because the reality of things is, if right now there was be a very, very rich dude that wanted your land, he would get your land.
Yep. One way or the
It
other.
doesn't matter what you want, okay? And it's because he has that illusion in his hands, okay? So it's a reality that we have to deal with.
Yeah,
It's not, I mean, I'm not saying that we shouldn't live in a moneyless society. I'm not saying that if it were up to me, we'd be getting rid of, I shouldn't say these things, they're on record, but what I'm trying to say is basically, I think we have a reality to face, and that is money right now is allocated very unfairly. Can we agree on that?
Sure. I'm uncomfortable with the word allocated.
Okay. I mean, you're getting the point. Help me out here. I'm trying to figure out how I can communicate to you that.
Let me try and state this in a way that you'll like, I think.
Okay.
That the money system itself is based on force, and that it's inherently unequal, and there's a lot of people who are going to keep it that way. You might call them unconscious, that's fine. But a lot of people are very invested in keeping a very unequal world. I'll add to that it's not just this ultra rich people that are the problem in that. It's all my friends almost, and it's almost all of your friends who are part of a consumer society that is using all the fossil fuels, that is propping up this money, that is keeping people living on, under a few bucks a day, providing you with cheap products. And, there's a lot of slave labor in the world, that we're all kind of part of that. And I'm afraid that if we pick this wealthy, evil people that are all bad, and we define ourselves as being all conscious and stuff, that we're not going to address the actual problems.
Okay, let me see. First of all, I think we need to make one point clear, and that is money is not evil. Money is not bad.
Right.
Money is just a neutral system for interchanging values.
It could be if we owned it and it was real.
Correct. It is at this point hijacked to a large extent.
Yes.
And all that I agree upon, right? But money as a basis concept is something which is neutral. Now here's another thing that we need to for the next argument. So here's number two. A growing economy is not damaging to the environment necessarily. It is only damaging if your economy is based on destruction of resources, destruction of planet, and stealing from the earth. Then it is highly damaging.
I agree with that. And that's a really interesting point, because there's a lot of people who disagree with you, but I do agree with you. We can create value that does not destroy the earth.
I'm going to get one more point. We can create value that enhances the earth. So I'm going to give I'm giving you an example. So one of the projects within the Paradise Syndicate is we want to create something which is called the Paradise Reef project. Okay, because there's some super amazing technology called BioRock, which if you build, it's basically an electric reef, and if you build it that way, coral grows up to 8 times faster than it normally would. It heals 20 times faster than it normally would, and it's up to 50 times more resilient against climate change. It's an absolute brilliant technology which you can build coral reefs out of, okay?
Yep.
So here's the thing. If we build a coral reef out of that, right? We make a coral reef out of that, and then we find a way to make money with that coral reef, because we send divers to that coral reef, or because we make a floating bar on that coral reef, or because we find out the medicinal value of coral and use coral medicinally. Whatever that way is, there's tons and millions of ways, and I'm happy for everybody in the world to look into those. Then we've created money using a coral reef, okay? What do we do with the money? We build another coral reef, because that makes money, and then you get another coral reef, money, coral reef, money, coral reef. At the end, what have we created? We created a business which the net effect of is a shit ton of coral reefs.
Right.
Okay, so we made money and we had a positive impact, and that is the economy which I am happy to see grow in the world, you know. Yeah. And it can grow indefinitely. I mean, almost indefinitely, almost until until the ocean cannot take any more fish. You know, that's how much we can grow it. So those two concepts, like money is neutral and business is neutral as well. Okay, mm-hmm. So on those. So now I'm going to I agree, and I kind of like that you've pointed this out, because this has always been a kind of a little wonky part of my argumentation, and I've never really tied it down too much. So I'm trying to tie it down a little bit more. If all of them, if right now, right, we have people that mostly consume mm-hmm. products which are products and services which are destructive to environment. Yep. Okay. And we have hardly any people that consume products that are actually inherently beneficial for the environment. Mm-hmm. If we ever want to change the planet, then we need to make this. Okay, we need to rise up the amount of people that have the access to spending money consciously. Okay, and I think so with my friends and your friends, I don't think that they're inherently bad people. They just have no alternative. Okay, no real alternative. I mean, you look at what kind of, if you're a standard American, you go into supermarket, what toothpaste do you buy? Colgate. And why? Because that's the only one. Like, is there any other toothpaste? You know, like, and that's the problem, because we've been hijacked through mass media, through marketing campaigns, to understand, oh, that's the one thing that's been imprinted in our heads, and now we think we have to buy that, right? Same thing with Coca-Cola and all these other huge brands. They've hijacked consciousness in a way, and they got people to buy their things. And so what I'm arguing for is not against rich people. What kind of, I do. So to be honest, I don't think we need billionaires. I don't think we need billionaires on this planet. I don't think there is a reason for a billionaire to exist, let alone a multiple hundreds of times billionaire in this world. I don't think we need those. I think you can totally get along with your, like, once you hit 999 million, you're done. Like, all the other money, it's just not going to go to your bank account. That's just gets spent in some other way, because you can totally have an amazing life with 999 million. Okay, personal opinion again. Does it have to be like that? No. I mean, we can argue about that. But here's my main argument, I think, and I think we'll agree on that. You know how big the U.S. debt is right now?
Probably pretty big.
You know roughly how much it is?
No idea.
I'm asking because I don't really know how much.
It could be think it's like 100 trillion. I have no idea.
Okay, let's say 100 trillion.
Sure.
Okay. So I want to make this thought experiment with you real quick. And that is, how do you think the world would look like, okay, right now, if the Dalai Lama had $1,000 trillion?
I don't know that it would change.
You'd have to explain that a little bit more, I think. Do you think the Dalai Lama would just sit there, he'd be like in this golden palace and like not do anything?
Yeah, I don't really, I mean, it's all fake money. So for example, if you look at a billionaire, right? They're not sitting on $1 billion worth of cash. They have stocks and things that are worth $1 billion. And they may have a lifestyle that is far beyond what many people's is, but their lifestyle is actually not radically more wasteful by comparison to the amount of money they have than somebody with less money. And so it's, in other words, it's just kind of fake. I mean, so let's say the Dalai Lama, who, let's for the sake of argument, assume he's a really great guy. You know, he seems nice, right? That's why you picked him. He's an officially cool dude. So let's say he had $1 trillion.
Not a trillion, 100 trillion, not 1,000 trillion.
Oh, that's right.
1,000 trillion. It's a difference. It's a difference.
You know, he probably wouldn't use it for evil things. He would probably, it's just numbers in an account.
So here's
start to pull it off. I mean, maybe he could hire an army and he could free Tibet from China.
He could buy up China with that money.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, So here's my point. Okay, here's my point with that.
Yeah.
Would we, as a human society, if somebody that had a abundantly beautiful heart, and I'm not saying the Dalai Lama has, if you have something against the Dalai Lama, whatever, like we just pretend somebody with an abundantly beautiful heart comes to the planet and has 1,000, for some reason, like God gave him $1,000 trillion.
Cool. Then
what would happen to hunger in the world? Would we still have hunger in the world?
I don't know.
No, we wouldn't. Right? Of course we wouldn't, because that person would go in and say, you know what, you guys, I'm just planting food forests for all of you. We're just going to have this massive campaign, and we're planting food forests everywhere. And you guess what? It's costing me it's going to cost me $200 billion to do.
Right.
I'm just going to spend those $200 billion on buying up land and putting up food forests everywhere. I'm creating this huge ass campaign of volunteers that I'm paying very handsomely to come into your country and plant food forests, teach you how to plant food forests. We don't have hunger anymore after that. Okay?
So let's generalize what you're saying. Because I am a guy who made money in the industrial world. You know, I worked for corporations, and I came and did a very non-profitable thing of protecting a forest and enhancing it. So our values are very much in tune. I really like what you're saying. So I'm a guy who didn't have $1 trillion. I didn't even have $1 million. But I'm one of those people who's either dumb enough or conscious enough or whatever to go ahead and do something that's totally not profitable for me personally. And there's a lot of other people, I think, like I look at who the big landowners are in the United States. And some of them are private landowners who have a bunch of land. Some of them, not very many, put that into land conservation status for when they die. And so they've actually consciously decided, I'm going to protect land instead of maximize my profit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's other people who are trying to do that. I think it's within an environment in the world where there is so much coercion that keeps people's resources very limited, that is such a complex web of systems that keep people enslaved, that a lot of people's altruism doesn't have enough space to work. I mean, we're
so
conflict, and
I agree with that, but I think we're getting a little bit into a different area here. So first of all,
bring it down from the $1 trillion theoretical,
but it's not a theoretical. It's here to make a fundamental point. Okay, and that fundamental point is, if heart-centered, beautiful people on this planet were to have more money than they have right now, then the world would be better than it is right now.
Okay, so we're imagining a class of people who are heart-centered. What was the other term you used?
They're heart-centered people. That's fine.
Okay.
Like
conscious is another thing you said.
Conscious people. Yes.
Who are these people?
Okay. Let's say. It's essentially, at some point during the human's evolution of consciousness, or like the expansion of consciousness, eventually it will hopefully be everybody, right? Right now, there is a peak of, like, there is kind of the bell curve, right? So like early adopters, innovators, early majority, and all that. So but at the beginning, we have pioneers and innovators, right? And these are like the people that are very in tune with Mother Earth. They're very in tune with spirit. They're very in tune with consciousness. They're not just living in a 3D world, but they're living in a multidimensional reality. They don't think themselves as being this little unit of life which lives and then is dead, and it doesn't matter what we do, but they think of themselves as being part of a greater consciousness, and they see themselves as just a soul which came here to have a human experience. Okay, these kind of people,
they sound like spiritual assholes.
Assholes?
Sure.
Why are they assholes? Why are they assholes?
Well, they just usually are. I mean, I'm sure you've met them, and you might be one for all I know. But I like part of what you're saying, like thinking about the earth as mattering, not being completely autocentric, not thinking that you're the only person and fuck everyone else, you know, having empathy for us as being on this adventure together and that we care about each other. That all sounds great to me. but I don't believe in a spiritual world. I'm a philosophical materialist. I think this is all there is. I don't think I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. I don't think that I had a past life. I don't like it when people tell me that forest fairies are talking to them and that I have to do what the forest fairies tell me to do, channeled through this asshole person who's using spirituality to fucking control me, just like the church and religion has done for so long. And just because they're prettier and have crystals and some more colors on their clothes doesn't confuse me. I've met too many of them, and they're spiritual fucking assholes.
Okay, good. I've never came across that term, but I'm happy for you to not. First of all, I don't think I am a spiritual asshole. I'm very much a practical person. I'm
not saying you are at all.
I've been growing up in a very physical 3D world. Okay,
yeah.
But I've had experiences in my life which definitely challenge that paradigm. Okay, so I'm open to the concept that there is more than just 3D physical reality. And I'm also very much open to the concept that some people are more sensitive to that than others. I am open to that. Does that mean, like, I'm personally very, like, I'd be very, very suspicious of everybody who has a very big ego, right? They're like, okay, I'm the person, I have all the knowledge, blah, blah.
And I'm the guru. I'm channeling all the truth, and
yes.
You have to do what I say.
I'm very much on your side there, and I think it's very dangerous for us to be like getting into these cults where we just glorify one person and think of ourselves as less, right? But at the same time, I have just used this kind of person as an example because there's others, right? There's others. There's people that are just like, they just totally dig and donate money to the WWF all the time. Like there's people that donate money to UNICEF and all the time. And like they think that that's a good thing, and I think inherently humans are altruistic to begin with, right? So I think, to be honest, most people have that in their path, in their genes to be good. Okay.
Yeah. The
problem is that our system is treating people that are trying to be good like assholes. Like they're getting hit in the face. That's what it's like. Our value system is so shrewd that somebody that goes into the woods and say, okay, I don't care what you guys do. I'm going to protect this wood and this forest, and I'm going to rebuild it. Actually, everybody will be like, okay, that's a crazy dude. Like he'll just whatever. He doesn't get it. We are supposed to make money and like and buy the new truck. Like he's an idiot, right? Yep. And the problem is, of course, that they themselves haven't really understood. Like they only thought to a certain level, which is the whatever comes after me, I don't give a fuck. And even right now, I don't give a fuck, because I think that like frying my brains with Wi-Fi and being around all this radiation is a good thing, right? So having said all of that, I think we can agree that there is a certain amount of people inside that bell curve right now that do care about the environment. They do care about not just seeing it all go downhill, and they do care about making it better. Okay, so I think it's exactly those kind of people that should have prosperity. Okay, because this is my main argument. I mean, you can argue, and then I think this is like one of the key sticking points that we've had on this conversation. I'm happy to go dive deeper into this, because I do agree with you that money is an illusion. I think where we differ is that I say we have to deal with it anyways, and we have to work with that reality, because we cannot just like get out of it and pretend that we are in our own bubble, because we are not. We're going to be able to do that once the critical mass has been reached, but it is not reached yet. Okay, so we need to make sure.
I think we don't disagree. I think we do agree. We've got the theoretical world that we would like to have, and we've got the pragmatic reality of the systems we're in now. So like, exactly. I need money to survive. I go to the hardware store, and I can't just buy anything with love. You know, they want money.
Exactly.
And you know, if I need to buy a new pair of glasses, which I do, then I'm going to have to pay someone for that. And so I understand completely, and I'm very much in agreement that we need to have businesses, that we need to produce pragmatic value that doesn't damage the world.
I think here's my point on top of it. Sorry for cutting off. I agree. So here's the thing. I believe if you're having a business, okay, and that business enhances the world because it grows corals all over the world, I want you to be a multimillionaire. Right. I think the world would be better off if more people like you existed, you know? And that's my argument with this is like, we should go away from the billionaires that made their money scamming people, directing them towards some stupid product which kills their health and all of that, and bringing those people that have a good heart and they want to save the environment and make those guys the ones that have all the money, right? Because if they would guide the world into a better place, okay?
So what you're basically saying is the wrong people are winning.
Correct.
The wrong people are benefiting. And a lot of that's, extractive technologies, destroying the environment.
So that's a good question. Why is that they're winning? Okay. And I think it's because force has been, and that's another principle I wanted to talk about real quick. And that's force. Okay. So I've read this quote the other day, and I think it's very true. And I'm happy to hear what you think, but it says, in order to be peaceful, you need to be capable of extreme violence.
It's a very interesting quote.
If you're not, then you're not peaceful. You are just docile.
That's a very hard topic, and it gets into if you're not ready to defend yourself against the initiation of force, then there will be force initiated against you. Yeah. And so there is a need as a society to protect what you have. And this is even at a community level. Let's say you had a successful community in all the ways we might imagine. You're going to attract people who will specifically come to take from that community until it's destroyed.
Correct.
So I kind of understand what you mean.
I think in this world right now, I don't have the perfect solution to that, but I do believe in that. Like, I have not come up with a counter argument for that quote. The only counter argument that I have in my head for that quote comes out of a book called 2100, I think 2150 AD by Thea something or other. It's basically describing a utopia where we're all being conscious. It's super interesting book. Like, it's way better read than just if you read George Orwell and then you read Aldous Huxley and you like feeling super depressed about your future, then do read that book. It's hard to find because like, who wants to promote consciousness, right?
Well, essentially, it's some form of utopian fiction, right?
So you would call it fiction, probably. The original story from the author is that she had an experience for various years where she went to sleep and woke up in the year 2150, and she describes that world, and she describes it in form of a novel because she knew nobody would believe her, right? But that's the basic of how that story came to be. And in the original time that it was like, she was from 1972 or something like that. So having said that, the way that works, that society, it's all based on the expansion of consciousness. So it's like all the mediocre or like the monotonous work is taken out of society. Everybody gets all the food that they want, whenever. Everybody has a car whenever they need a car. Everybody has all the things that we would normally, like right now, work for to get money is gone, and the only thing that remains is growing as a person and growing as a consciousness. So, and the only other way, that the way that they treat violence, because there's like a cool is setup where all the world is like conscious, but then there's this little island which they call, like they say everybody has macro consciousness, and there's this little island that has micro consciousness, and that micro consciousness is still based on our thoughts, like monetary systems, hierarchies, competition, and all these things, and the only thing they do is basically they're fine with being killed. They're like, okay, I know I'm going to be like, I'm so conscious that I can remember, hopefully, when I come into this life as another incarnation, and then I'm happy to be killed. Me personally, I'm not that conscious. Like I'm going to be the one that if you're trying to kill me, I'm going to kill you first.
Good.
That's what my personal conviction is. Right?
I agree with you. That's great.
So having built on that, I think, would I agree with violence per se against somebody else? No, I don't like violence. But I think that if I'm just peaceful and I have no capability of violence, I cannot defend myself, then I am just going to be a victim of those systems that can do that against me. That we've seen a very interesting example of that the other day, or just now with like the riots in Portland and all these things, where I saw this picture on Facebook. There was a very good resumption of it. It's like you saw these people, like armed rednecks, that went to a government building because they didn't want to wear masks. So they stormed the government building with arms and no contract. Like there was no police. There was nobody was arrested. They was just like peaceful, right? Like people got in there and they did what they cared about, which I think I agree with, right? And no harm to them. Another one was like something similar with a black marching militia somewhere, like all armed to the teeth.
Yep. Black
man riding, like no police, nothing, no confrontation, zero.
Yep.
And then the last picture were like some protesting moms, okay, with pregnant moms protesting against violence on their in Portland and being pepper sprayed and beaten up.
Yep.
Okay, so that's unfortunately the reality that we live in. And does that mean that we should all be just talking about killing each other again? No, but you cannot. I don't think you can be really peaceful until you are able to defend yourself. I think that's
right.
You're just. So I mean that's where somebody would have to tell me a little bit better what Gandhi did. But I think if your strategy is just like to be suffering until you kind of like, you know, somebody like gives you what you want out of compassion or out of,
right, they may never give it to you.
Exactly. I mean, I think that's what Malcolm X said. It's like, nobody will give freedom to you if you're a man, and I think he meant man as in woman, man, and everybody. You take it because that's the way it is, and it doesn't. That hasn't changed yet.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Malcolm X. He scared people into making the kind of change that they could accept from Martin Luther King Jr.
Yeah,
and people have to be scared to be oppressors.
Yeah, I mean, I think we just need to come to grips with that. This whole situation is not going to be solved just with lovey-dovey everything. Like lovey-dovey doesn't solve our political problems. Lovey-dovey doesn't solve the corruption in our political system. It doesn't. But what does is consciousness, like understanding what's going on in reality, and becoming conscious of the solutions, and then effectively like making those happen, right? So, I mean, this is one of these things. We have to be. Like, I'm just saying it. Whatever. You'll see when my life happens. But politically, that in the U.S. there's this. I'm not saying any new things. I think it's hopefully going to be okay. What's the name? The actor. That's been in the Hunger Games. It doesn't matter. So there's this campaign against corruption in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. And they made a study or somebody has made a study, and it was basically going like this, and I'm paraphrasing, you should look it up, and maybe I'll find the link somewhere, I'll post it. That in the United States right now, if you you have 80% agreement in the populace for a certain change of law, then the, pardon?
Doesn't mean shit, yeah.
Yeah, it's the chance of that law getting passed, you want to guess how high it is?
5%?
It's 30%.
30, okay.
30%. So now you have a law which 5% of people are in favor of. You want to guess how much, what chance of that getting into law is in the United States?
Probably the same. The people don't
30%.
matter.
30%,
yeah.
Exactly. It does not matter what people want.
That's right. Because
the people that are in the system that are making the decisions make them on their own. So you live in an illusion of democracy until that is solved.
I do not consider the United States a democratic nation.
So on that principle, okay, the only thing that can be done is for the people to rise up and to demand democracy for themselves and to see fit that happens, because right now it isn't, you know, like there's obvious truth to that. So we need to understand what that means for each individual. Again, for you, this individual, it means becoming self-reliant to begin with, right? Taking care of yourself, of your finances, of your health, of everything, making sure that you are as resilient as you can, and then helping people around you do that, right? And then jointly going forward and changing these things. So again, if all these people that we are talking about that are if you haven't realized it yet, I think you are getting to the grips with Paradise Syndicate, right? I mean, if all these people that have realized what actually needs to be happening in order to get us to a paradise, join forces and then say, you guys, you know what, we should run a campaign which makes corruption impossible, okay? And instead of just going onto the streets and being like, yeah, we want less corruption,
right, we
actually fund that with $100 million and a fucking smart team that gets it done. And then we stand a chance to getting it done, you know, because then we raise enough awareness amongst the people, then we have the mechanisms to make it happen. But if there's no money and nothing, just ideology involved, and everybody has to run their own lives and pay their own bills and doesn't get even to that place where they can think about these things, then that's the best way to keep people in their sheep status, is by keeping us constantly occupied with bullshit, which is, oh, how do I pay that bill? How do I pay my rent? How do I get the money enough that I need to pay for my car repair and all that shit?
Yeah, I'm very sympathetic with people who feel very trapped in the system and like they can't do anything because they are trapped in systems.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm a lucky enough person where I've got to go off and live in my own little green bubble and hopefully still offer things in these kind of solutions. What I really like about what you're saying here is that we should focus on building what we want among ourselves, whoever that is, and however we define us good people, that we go ahead and focus on positive solutions that we can implement right now, right around us, with what seeds we can plant, literal or ideological, and that we can change our relationships with each other and create solution rather than expend all of our energy fighting against systems that will simply crush us. I mean, they don't care if you protest in the street. That helps them. They love that, you know?
Well, I don't know whether they love it, but I think they don't care at all. Like, they know that as long as you're not, like, I think the only possible, but even that is probably like, it's hard, is like, if you call them a lot and like be really annoying, then maybe there is something you could do about it. But like, even that, like, it's been a long shot. It's going to be a long shot. And it's just because people don't give a shit who is in power and who is in politics. I mean, to be honest, if you think that like just two candidates, like we have right now, upcoming election, you think these two people are the most qualified in your country
I
run the
don't
nation?
think anyone in the United States thinks those guys are great. Maybe
Yeah, but that's
somebody
the
does.
system that you guys have created that you live with and you support, and you're like, and there's like all these divisions, like great, like, oh yeah, but
I
like,
think there's a lot of people who don't. I think that there's minorities on various edges of issues that are actually dedicated to these things. But I think the majority of people feel
doesn't
disciplined.
care.
They don't
I think
vote.
I think the majority.
I was against this shit for 30 years.
Yeah,
And
I think
I left the country 16 years ago because almost everyone I know simply wants to use the government to oppress other people. And these are
yes.
nice people. These are my friends. But it's like nobody gets that they're just pawns in a big game, and that the two parties actually are the same party working together to stay rich and control things.
Yes. So having said all that, I agree. And the solution to that, I think we've been alluding to in a various ways. It is not complacency. It is, first of all, taking yourself as much as you can out of that equation of being constantly occupied in your head. Because if like, that's why we have a 50, 60 hour work week, right? Because if we didn't have that, like if then people would have too much time to think.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we'd come up with these questions as in, why is that way? Like, why is there a private entity called the Federal Reserve, which is neither federal nor is it a reserve, and prints money whenever it wants to do that? Why is that possible? Like, why is that? How? And then they might look into these things, and then we get more consciousness when we talk about these topics. But until then, it's just, so I don't think the government is not going to solve the problems of government, right? Because as Albert Einstein said, you're not going to solve a problem on the same level as thinking as it was created, right? And so the only feasible solution is decentralized self-reliance and decentralized abundance, which is the key thing that I think most people don't do. And that's where the Paradise Syndicate again comes from. It stands for creation of abundance. So I'm giving you an example. I'm part of the Paradise Syndicate, okay? Because one of the questions is like, what do people get out of that, right? I mean, you haven't understood that it's the only way that you can get yourself out of this misery as a human society is unity, and then striving towards ideals that can actually help us liberate humanity, right? Mm-hmm. But very concretely, let's say we come up with a really awesome business model for you to locally grow blue-green algae on your houses, okay? And then produce bioepoxy, which is positive impact glue, and biodiesel with it, okay? Mm-hmm. Then through the Paradise Syndicate, you will actually be able to get that technology onto you. You'll have an investment for sure, but then you'll be able to produce value on your site indefinitely, okay? Which is epoxy and which is biodiesel, okay? That is one example of a positive impact business that we want to franchise into the syndicate so that people can actually have that abundance inherently in their communities. Because I think that's one of the crucial parts of taking yourself out of the system is, oh, now I'm like, I mean, I've been employed and I've been an entrepreneur, right? So I know how easy it is to be employed, right? You have a very easy life. You go to work at 8 and 9 in the morning, and you come back at 6 or 7 at night, and that's your day. And you know what you have to do because it's what your boss says that you have to do. And if you're an entrepreneur, all of a sudden you have to do all these things by yourself. And you have to come up with a way of earning money. And that's not easy, right? But here's the thing. We keep trying to reinvent the wheel. Like, everybody tries to keep reinventing the wheel. The reason is because we are very separated. It's because you live in Mexico and I live in Germany, and we might are completely aligned on 99% of the things that we think would we realize, but we're not working together. I'm not helping you to create abundance, and you're not helping me to create abundance. And that's stupid, okay? That's based on on a nonsensical paradigm, okay? And it's related to having fear, related to not like fear of the unknown, fear of somebody that you don't know yet, fear of somebody that hasn't been holding your hands for like 5 years before you ever think that you could make a business happen with that person. And that is old thinking, okay? We need to come to grips with that somebody could just out of the realization that we are all sitting on the same spaceship, which is spaceship Earth flying through space. We are all in this together. And if your engine room burns and I have water, then I'm stupid not to give you that water, because we're all going down together if we don't.
Yeah.
And we are all rising up together if we do.
Yeah.
So that's the concept for the syndicate. It's about getting these people together. It's about getting know-how together. It's about combining reach. It's about combining impact. It's about sharing expertise. It's about sharing prosperity opportunities. That's the essence of why that works. So I'll give you another example here. Let's say Coca-Cola, right? Coca-Cola has, do you know how many employees Coca-Cola has?
Oh, it's got to be a lot. A million.
700,000 people.
Ooh, I was pretty
700,
close. A million.
Yeah,
that's pretty good.
700,000 people. I was surprised. I would have said like 100,000, something like that. 700,000 people globally. They're arguably one of the most destructive companies in the world. I mean, putting out tons of plastic, like destroying our environments, destroying the ecosystems. Like now with the water.
Encouraging diabetes. Yeah.
Highly destructive, right? Nonetheless, highly profitable. Super profitable, right? So they have a product. So again, here's the sales pitch for Coca-Cola. You want to drink a sugary drink, which gives you diabetes and kills birds? We will sell it for you to like 3 times the price that the water bottle would be worth. But at the same time, it really just is horrible for your teeth, for your children. You're going to die and you're going to destroy the planet with it. You want to buy this? And people say, yes. And the reason is because, here's the reason, okay? The reason is because there's 700,000 people in the world making sure that happens, okay? And if 700,000 people in the world make sure that something happens, that happens, okay? Because it's 700,000 people that make sure that it happens, okay? And that's our problem as these individual snowflakes that we're floating around in the world, and we're finding our individualistic minimal impact and maximizing thingamajig, is we are all fighting this battle individually. Mm-hmm. And we're not finding it together. We're not all sitting in the same boat and being like, oh, Brian, you need something? Here, let me send down 15 people that are ready to get it done. We get it done, and then we reap the rewards benefit together, because we are sowing the seed together, because we know that as a real community of like-mindedness, we can get things done together. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I mean, in total isolation, what can we really do?
Probably going to edit that up.
We can edit out or not, actually. It might be a good breaking point here. So yes. I love what you're talking about, man, and you're a good speaker. So and we share, like you said, I think probably 99% of values, and the other 1% is probably not even important. You know, we don't even have to agree on everything.
True.
No one ever calls me.
The Matrix.
See? Buenos días.
Mr. Smith.
Okay, tal vez voy a pasar o tal vez no, no soy seguro. Muchas gracias por llamar. Hasta luego. That's a food truck. They're selling food in Yotatiro. Right now, I've got it down to leaving the forest about once every 3 weeks to buy fresh fruits and vegetables. And then our gardens are producing more right now. The project I'm at is Bosque Village, and in a lot of ways, it's an implementation of what we're talking about. Now, unfortunately, it's a very alone project. I'm the primary driving force behind it. And I care a lot about resource issues, like you're talking about businesses and things. A lot of the people who have wanted to work with me only want to take. And that's why I don't see the problem as just a few rich people we'd like to blame, but I see it as the larger group of like people who travel around the world with their idealistic notions, just looking to slum it and live for free in a very poor place.
Yeah.
I've lost a lot of respect for those folks, and they're happy talkers, and a lot of them are spiritual, of course, too. So I like your pragmatic bent to things, you know. I think that's really important. And I'm not sure if I'm into the blue-green algae or not. I'd have to look at it and see how it fits into my thing. And I'm very wary of it.
It's an example.
It's one example, right. And we need thousands of things like that. And some of them will fit into some systems differently than others.
True.
One thing I would like to add to this conversation is that we have opportunities right now that we've never had before in the world, and that is we can share information.
Yes.
Even back in the 60s, when you had people doing their utopian experiments in communities and things, most of which failed horribly for obvious reasons, not all of them, but we now have the ability to learn from those experiences in the past, and we have the ability to learn from every culture around the world. What technologies worked for them? How was their architecture? How did they treat the earth and plant? You know, and we can do that in the context of having scientific knowledge about, oh, here's how you breed seeds, you know, here's how physics works and evaporation and things.
Paradise Syndicate, dude, it is the same thing. It's like, right. It's about getting all that knowledge together, getting the expertise together, sharing it, and you make it. And I understand, man. I know that the troubles that you've had, right? And I mean, before we had this conversation, I told you I looked at what you guys been doing, what you've been doing, and it's amazing, right? I applaud you, brother. I do. Okay, and I say brother of light because I think you are. Okay, I think you are bringing. So to be okay, just really like the way I see it, you are light, and the reason is because the atoms that are built, like the molecules that your cells are built out of, have a space in them, and then between that there's atoms, and between them there's protons and electrons, and guess what they are made out of? They are made out of vibrant energy, and that is light, okay? That is literally nothing else than a photon that vibrates around. That's what you're made out of. 99% of that surface area of my hand is empty space. Mm-hmm. It is empty space. Physically speaking, it's 99.9997% empty space. So we are made out of light, okay? We are, there's a lot more to, you know that, okay? There's a lot more to reality than that meets the eye initially. Sure. We don't tend to think like that, but it comes up like once you've had your experiences, then you realize that. So that's why I'm saying, I am just saying radically, like I think what I'm doing radically different from many people is, first of all, I do not hoard my ideas.
Yeah.
I'm just going to be like flat out, like right. Doesn't fucking care. Go ahead, steal it all.
Open source, Creative Commons. Let's give information away for free.
Yes and no. I don't believe in only open source, because the problem with open source, it doesn't make money. Okay.
It doesn't.
And money doesn't create prosperity. So we need. So I want another key aspect that I'm doing differently than people in the past maybe is, I think prosperity building is fundamentally important, because if you can live, so here's the thing, if I can live in this thing, okay, and live in absolute luxury, and have the nicest laptop in the world, and actually because I bought it, when I bought it, I made sure that 10 other laptops are getting recycled. I drive a super amazing car which runs on the own biodiesel that I'm producing on my roof. But for every 10 kilometers or every 150 kilometers that I drive my biodiesel car, because I'm producing my own, I'm actually pulling down more CO2 than I'm setting out. Like, it's good for me to drive my car. And then people see that, they'll see it online, they'll see it in social media, whatever, and they're like, what the fuck? Like, why is that dude so rich and living in the beautiful, amazing world? Why is that? Okay. And then they'll be interested, you know, because then they're like, oh, there's money to be made here. Oh, yeah, money. I want money. But then, oh, it's not just money. There's like beautiful house and amazing people, and like it's all dandy and cool. So it's precisely that, getting people onto the money train. Okay. And when I say money, I don't say US dollars.
Right.
I say interchangeable neutral value system that we can actually go ahead and produce value for and redeem value out of. Okay. So we need to make sure that we get to become a value producing entity, all of us, right? And the more value we produce, the more is going to come out of this.
Yeah, and prosperity is attractive.
It is. It's one of the most attractive things that are out there right now, and always have been. And it makes so much sense. It makes sense at all levels, because yourself, you're chastising yourself by not being prosperous, because you think that that's the right choice morally, but then you understand it's actually not. You know, if I can make sure by having more money that I can actually have a bigger positive impact on the world than with less money, then it becomes a responsibility to become a millionaire. It becomes like, if I really honestly care about, like truthfully, honestly care about saving the environment, and I think I'll do that without money, then I'm limiting my possibilities, and I'd be way better off being a millionaire doing that.
Yeah, my own path on that has been very interesting, because I came from the United States, and I did very well there. I did not have a problem. I mean, I grew up kind of poor, not dirt poor, but without a lot. And I found it relatively easy to become wealthy. I worked for, some decades and stuff. And
what did you do?
I'm a geek, basically. I worked at Microsoft. I worked at other companies and on software things. And it was enjoyable, I guess. But I essentially, at a fairly young age, became so successful that I was able to take, it wasn't like I come to some sudden realization that things were very messed up in the world. I went to war when I was 19 and saw what a total hypocritical, violent world it is. So I had already been wanting to break away from the system. And then by the time I was 37, I had enough resources that I could actually escape from that system. And I think at that point, when you have enough abundance, and this gets into like people living paycheck to paycheck and they don't have options to just break away. But I took that option, and I think other people will want to take that option. In this case, what I did was I went kind of the monk route. I removed myself from consumerism, and I needed to break away from that as if it was a drug.
Yeah.
So I lived for 2 years in the woods without even any electricity. And it was dark and cold and messed up and lonely. I didn't speak the language. It was just a really hard experience. But that was good, because I think you need that shock to break away. And then a lot of my goals have been so far to reject the traditional prosperity of consumerism, and each year slowly get poorer, which is also frightening because I actually got poorer. I sold all my stocks. I completely divested from the system until I completely ran out. And that's a very educational position to be in.
It's a fucked up position to be in, Brian. I hate it myself, and I've done something very similar, okay? I have been very successful in business. I've created a VR company. I've created, I've grew it from 0 to 25 employees, from zero revenue to 1.7 million in 6 months. Cool. Okay. And then I worked my ass off to get there. And you guess what? Then I sold it all. I bought a sailboat. I repaired it, cost way more money. I invested a little bit of money in a bio-epoxy company, bought a bit of land in Yucatan, and that was it. Okay, so I mean, how far can you get it with 33, right? Yeah. So here's the thing: is it going to be the right choice for us to keep on that path towards being poor?
No,
or it's not. And it's absolutely not. And I think I do understand all these questions. Like, I mean, dude, if I hadn't had enough downloads over the time, inspirations and all that to get to all these, I mean, this is not this didn't come to me in like 3 days. I didn't read a book and a blog article and I was like, oh yeah, that's what we should do. I worked on this for a while, okay? And then I realized, oh, we have some fucked up paradigms that are the basis of things, and we have some fucked up like we conceive certain things of negative because we just don't know of a positive alternative because it doesn't exist. Right. Okay, it doesn't mean that it couldn't be there, it just hasn't been implemented. Okay, it hasn't been brought to the scale yet. And so that's really where I to be honest, it's all started for me. It started when I saw this video of the bio-rock reef. I saw a project where somebody had no reef. It was all dead. It was all white, broken off gray coral somewhere destroyed on the ocean floor. And then some dudes came together on a beach. They welded together a bunch of rods, brought it onto the ocean floor, and bound with zip ties some broken off coral onto that. And then the next shot after that was 12 months later.
Yeah.
And I saw a vibrant, beautiful, growing ecosystem with fish, with abundant coral everywhere. And I was like, fuck. We can totally do it ourselves. Like we can make nature. Like you're doing nothing else right there. You're propagating nature. You're a bee that propagates nature. The Amazon rainforest was engineered, man. It's not something that just magically occurred. If you leave a forest untended, then it's just going to overgrow like anything. I mean, something will come out of it, but not an abundant, beautiful prosperity system necessarily, right?
Yeah, there are ways for us to actually be positive influences in natural environments. So I totally agree. And that's where I'm at now, is I feel like I've gone so far in the direction of removing myself from civilization that I want to reattach to civilization, but not the same one I came from. So I'm very interested in what you're talking about building different models, businesses that actually are positive for the world and that make people happy to be in them. So I'm ready, man. So that's why we're talking.
Good.
And we've been talking pretty well. This has been a long chat. I think we should wrap it up though.
Yeah, we can. We have a lot of questions that you sent me that I haven't answered or we didn't dive into yet a lot about intentional communities. Well, pandemic.
We didn't focus on it that much because that isn't totally your point. Your point is the ethics under things, and it could be individuals. And so maybe we'll do another chat where we'll talk about how do you organize with other people and have that function, because that's a very hard problem.
I'd be very excited to talk about this. I think there's so many avenues of this to explore. And I'd be happy to go into a lot more detail also with your specific project. I mean, in my mind, you're already part of the Paradise Syndicate community concept, right? Because you're kind of the perfect fit for that, right? You're there with your consciousness, and you understood that you're ready for the next step, and this is the next step.
Great.
Okay.
So where can people find out more about Paradise Syndicate?
So we're just working on releasing our website. For now, it's a launcher theme, so it really doesn't get you a lot more than to be able to get onto our newsletter. Which, at this point, to be brutally honest, the way that the Paradise Syndicate works for now is just I know somebody else and nobody else is on it. So right now we're about 40, 50, 60 people right now at this point.
That's great.
We are all over the globe. We all understand what needs to be done. Most of us run businesses. Most of us are entrepreneurs. There's some healers in there. There's some educators in there. There's all sorts of people from all realms of life. There's architects. And that's kind of like how it should be, right? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing that we're working on right now is we're working on creating a positive impact crowdfunding platform, okay? Mm-hmm. In order to create businesses that are profitable and positive impact.
And so what you said there was not, you didn't say you were going to create a crowdfunding effort. You're going to create a new platform for crowdfunding efforts.
Correct. Yeah,
okay.
It's going to be on paradisesyndicate.com. We're just working on it. You're going to be able to find all sorts of positive impact businesses that you can become a part of by investing into it. The concept is always to not just, I mean, there might be some concepts where you just get a kick out of it, like as in, let's say you're building one of these, and maybe if you kind of like in a similar crowdfunding platform, you just really like the idea, you'd like to spend the night there, then maybe you just gonna purchase that kind of like as in a Kickstarter. But really, what we want people to do is to invest into these concepts and to get a return, because only if we can create positive impact and abundance for the people that are investing in it does the system really work. Okay, so that's one of the cool new things that we're working on. We're hoping to be able to release that very soon. And then there is, as I said, we're working on a community which is built based on these principles in Yucatan called Ecovías de Amor. There's also a Facebook page for that. So I'll give you a couple links for people. Like I definitely encourage people to follow us on Facebook. Don't worry, you won't see many, like, I don't know, depends on when you watch this video. Right now, you see very, very few announcements, because to be honest, right now, I really don't care about going into the width, like into broad people, because right now I care about the depth of the connection to each member. So I need to know the people that what are they interested in, what are they working on, what are they struggling with, and then getting these people really excited to form a really, really strong, tight-knit core team. And then once we are ready, once the crowdfunding platform is ready, then we're going to start going that. I'll start doing a YouTube series and talking about these concepts and sharing some more insights on these things. And then we're going to try to broaden our scope. But for now, we're really in stealth mode, if you want to call it that way.
Right. And of course, we'll put links in the description to these videos below so people can browse those. My own project is Bosque Village. I now have a Patreon account that people can subscribe monthly to see our special videos and track our projects. We're on Facebook and elsewhere. I think that the most important thing here that I hope people get out of this chat is that they can take personal responsibility in their lives. Anybody who listens to this is going to hear some set of ethics or values. And I know a lot of people feel really alone and they don't know what to do. And I hope that they get inspired that from whatever perspective they're coming from, if they like these values, they can implement them right now and tomorrow with other people right around them. So we're on the same team.
I think the cool thing about that message that I came across the realization the other day is it's hope.
Yeah,
it's hope because we see the world decline and being destroyed, and we see this big picture of in 10 years only just gonna eat Monsanto cereal and that's it. And that's not true. It's not the reality. The reality of what happens in 10 years depends on what we decide to do today. Okay, so if we understand that the way out of a highly destructive and degenerative system is the only way out is positive impact. There's no other way. Okay, you cannot, if you have your garage full of bullshit and it's full, you're not going to clean it up by just putting less into it. Okay, we need to take the crap out of the garage and make sure that we can rectify the system. Okay.
Yep.
And in order, and for our, and that applies on all of our systems. On our personal level, that applies on community, it applies to our business, it applies to all the systems and ideas that you could create. So super excited to share this. And I'm super excited for people to jump on that positive impact train, because it is fun. It's actually like, it gets you excited, because you're like, oh, we're not doom and gloom. That's the only way. It's not the eventuality that we all need to arrive at apocalypse. We can actually create paradise for ourselves and then share it with others. Okay. And that's, I think, a super exciting message for everybody out there that is kind of a little bit in despair or was in despair. And I hope that that contributed. And I really am very excited for all you guys that if some of this talk touched on your heart, either on any side, I do encourage you to follow Bosque Village. Brian is doing an amazing project there, and I think you'd be learning so many beautiful things about his project, and you'd feel very, very inclined to come pay him a visit and spend some time there. And at the same time, if you feel touched you in some way, then you want to learn more, then I encourage you to follow us on Facebook. Follow us on the website, and yeah, just get in touch and get some type of relationship established. I'm very happy to see any new member that really feels that they could contribute to a better world in this place.
Great, your work is fantastic. Thank you so much for chatting. I feel really happy to get to know you, and I hope actually we can chat again.
Right on, Brian.